Hello, everyone, and welcome to People of Interest. I'm your host, Miguel Guanipa. As you know, the premise of this show is that everyone has a story to tell, and through those stories, when we listen to people's stories, we can be perhaps taught something, we can be guided, we can be helped, and perhaps even inspired by the stories. My guest today is Robert Cote. Robert Cote is a good friend. He's one of the smartest people that I know, and a very kind person also. And he's a very real person. And today he's here to tell us his stories. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the show. I really appreciate it. Oh, there it is. This. Okay, so it'd be nice now that we have the background. Something to me is a little foreign. I know what it is because you told me, but why don't you tell me a little bit about that thing there?
Sure. So it's the logo for the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. Um, it's basically the organization that the character Hellboy is associated with.
Okay.
They're all kinds of weird freaks and anomalies that join together for good to fight against bad freaks and anomalies. Yeah.
So okay, how does it go again? The paranormal.
The Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense.
Okay. I'm glad you said something else after that sentence because if we have started the show like that and just so you're one of the things that Robert is like me. He's a fan of he likes movies, and so sometimes we talk a lot about movies. And we he told me today that one of his favorite movies, if not your favorite, is Hellboy 2, right?
Yeah.
So I was curious about give me a little background about the Hellboy story. Who is Hellboy? How did it come about? What's the story behind him?
So Hellboy comes from a comic called Hellboy. It's by a guy named Mike Mignola. And so the character Hellboy is basically this kind of gateway gets opened up to usher in chaos and destruction, and out of it comes this little like devil baby, and that devil baby gets adopted by someone and gets raised to fight against evil, and grows up to be Hellboy.
So it's Hellboy, but he's fighting evil,
Yes,
which
yeah.
is kind of an interesting.
He doesn't look like a hero, you know.
But fundamentally he's kind of a good guy,
Yeah,
even though he's got the name Hellboy.
yeah.
So when we think of hell, we think of bad things. I guess
Yeah.
most people.
And I don't know if he's always referred to as Hellboy, but I don't know if he's actually called it. I think sometimes they call him Red, sometimes they call him other stuff, but it's kind of like sometimes we refer to the shark in Jaws as Jaws, even though that's not his name, you know,
Okay.
that type of deal.
I remember. I think I saw part of the first Hellboy, and they cut his horns at some point, at some juncture, right? Is that?
Yeah, they actually, I think it's in the first one. They have a scene where he has an angle grinder and he's grinding them down.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
But he caught him himself.
I believe so. At
Oh.
the end of it, they grow and he breaks them again. He doesn't like the look of them. They make him look too much like a devil.
Oh, is there any kind of symbolic significance to the horns, or is that something that is not talked about at all? Or?
I don't think so necessarily. So in Hellboy 2, they have a scene where they have these special goggles that you can look at and you can see somebody's kind of true form. And so when they look at Hellboy, they see his horns like fully grown back and he has like a fiery crown above his head and whatever.
Oh. Why did Hellboy appeal to you? Do you remember when was the first time that oh man, I really like this character here?
I think it is a combination of I thought he looked cool He's got a just this big rock like glove on, which is kind of like a part of his hand, I guess. And I thought he just looked cool, and he has like a bit of an attitude that was appealing. But he gets put into these scenarios which are happening in the real world, but with unreal stuff. So in the first movie, Rasputin is alive and walking around and has access to these superpowers and stuff. In the second movie, they go to an area where it's almost like a secret gathering of all these different mythological type creatures that are living alongside us but hidden. So there's just this element of the unreal with the real found appealing.
Sort of like Pokemon Go kind of deal. Or? I'm just kidding.
In a way, yeah. There's kind of like this, yeah. You can see it that
Yeah,
it's there. Yeah,
but you
actually,
don't know.
it's surprisingly accurate. That description there, yeah.
Huh? I didn't know that was gonna hit like that. Well, that's pretty good. So you like you like comics for some time since you were younger.
Oh yeah.
Because I know sometimes we talk about the difference between Marvel and DC comics. So where is Hellboy in that?
So, Hellboy is part of a third comic book thing. They're from Dark Horse Comics, which is kind of an apt name because they just kind of come out with stuff out of nowhere. One of them being Hellboy. I'm not sure where Dark Horse stands now. I think someone had told me that DC was kind of getting the rights to them, taking them over, but I don't know if that's official or not. But there are a few kind of not big comic book companies that aren't the two giants of Marvel and DC. No, but they're nowhere near as well known as the Marvel and DC.
Well, that's pretty good. I know I heard you use the word dark horse sometime in the past. I think we were talking about politics, and you said maybe the Democrats will use a dark horse or something this time, so he gets through, or she, whatever.
Yeah.
And the idea
Is that it's a one that you don't expect to bring out the victory.
Okay. I wasn't going to talk about politics, but it just clicked in my mind when you said dark horse. So who's the one thing that we talked about one time was that there are heroes in Marvel and heroes in DC, but would you prefer the villains in one of those two? Was it either Marvel has better villains or something, or better heroes, or something to that effect? I can't quite remember what you told me. But.
I'm not sure. I think in particular, if you look at, sorry, I'm not remembering the conversation now. It was Superman specifically.
Superman, yeah.
I'm not a fan of Superman. I think he's too powerful.
He's DC.
He's DC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You're not a fan of Superman?
No.
Why?
He has too much going for him.
Too much going for him?
He has super strength.
There's
super
no like tragedy
speed,
behind his life.
He
Is that what it is?
flies. The tragedy of his life, he's not really there for. Like his whole planet and people die, but he's a baby at the time. He gets raised by these people
Also, he like doesn't feel
on a
it.
farm.
He doesn't feel it at all.
No, he doesn't have the experience of loss. Like say like Batman.
Batman,
who,
Batman,
has
yeah.
his parents killed or whatever.
Right, Batman. I remember in the movie. I guess that's I'm not as well versed, but they kill his parents, and Jack Nicholson kills his parents, right, when he's younger.
So in that movie,
The Joker, is it?
in the Tim Burton movie,
One of the best.
they do okay. It's the Joker that kills him.
Yeah.
In the comics, that wasn't really said. It was just kind of like a random guy. So when you have Batman Begins, which is another kind of origin story of Batman, it's just some like random guy who's down on his luck.
So, but Batman is old enough to see that happen,
Yeah.
and so he lives with that. What about Spider-Man? What's Spider-Man's problem like? What did he suffer?
So Spider-Man, he feels responsible for his uncle's death. So he's raised by his aunt and uncle, and he gets these powers by being bitten by a radioactive spider. And um, he starts to take advantage of these, and he does like kind of these underground wrestling things. And
Wow.
yeah,
None of this stuff is in the movie, is it?
it was in the
So-
Tobey Maguire one.
Oh,
They
okay,
included
okay.
that.
All right.
So basically, the promoter for the wrestling is like, yeah, I'm not going to pay you like what I said I was going to pay you. And then that guy gets robbed at gunpoint. And Spider-Man, being super powerful, could easily stop him, but decides not to. Later on, that guy kills.
His uncle?
He kills Spider-Man's uncle.
Man.
And so Spider-Man looks back on that and being like, I could have stopped that. You know, obviously he didn't know that was going to happen, but he's like, I let a bad guy get away, and look what happened.
So he saved this guy. He saved this guy from getting robbed. Or
He didn't. He didn't.
didn't.
So he could have. So the guy got robbed.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, why didn't you stop him? And he's just like, you weren't going to pay me.
Oh, and then the guy kills his uncle because of that?
Because so he gets away. He ends up, I think he needs his uncle's car or whatever. So
Right.
he shoots him and takes the car.
Does he know that it's Spider-Man's uncle when he killed him?
No.
Oh, okay. So it's just a
No,
bad
Spider-Man's like, you know, in like costume and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
like
yeah.
he can't let people know who his
bad
family
coincidence.
is.
But he
Yeah.
doesn't know that it's Tobey Maguire's uncle when he kills him.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So it's a set of bad coincidences.
Yeah.
So does Spider-Man ever take revenge on that? Or?
I believe he does. He does catch the guy because he gets surrounded by police, and he has this opportunity to kind of, you know, to kill the guy, but he decides not to. He hands him over to the police. So, kind of justice is served in a way, but
Yeah.
it doesn't bring back his uncle.
Yep. What about Aquaman? What did Aquaman have to suffer?
I'm not real big into
Not the
into
big
Aquaman.
Not the Aquaman guy?
No, I don't really know him well.
Okay, so he's got Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. What's another one that's a notable hero in the comics that we listen? These three everybody knows.
Yeah.
The Hulk.
There's the Hulk.
The
yeah.
Hulk. But the Hulk, there's no tragedy in the Hulk. He had a bad experiment, right? That went awry
There's
and-
huge tragedy. in
Oh.
that. You ever see?
I didn't know that.
You ever watch the show?
Yeah.
In the
yeah,
70s one?
with Bill Bixby.
Yeah, with Bill Bixby.
Yeah, but I don't
every
remember-
Every episode ends when they play the credits and they're playing that somber music and he's just like trying to hitch a ride.
Yeah, I
you
know he's trying to hitch a ride, but like, did somebody die or something?
Well, so
It's like Kung Fu.
with
Comes
him,
to another town.
yeah. Well, with Kung Fu, no, actually, with both of them, they're kind of righting wrongs of people. But
yeah.
with the Hulk, he can't control his stuff. And so all it takes is him losing his temper, or in the show, for him to get beaten up a little bit and then thrown behind something.
Yeah, well, he didn't have like a tragedy in the family or something like that he had to deal with. No trauma or anything like that. Except
Not
his
that
own.
I'm aware of. I mean, well, I'm sure at some point it's gone out of control. You know, I mean, he can't safely be around people.
Yeah, well, that's kind of tragic. There's a lot of people like that.
Yeah. Thankfully, they don't have Hulk powers. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of interesting. Another thing that you told me about that you're also a Disney follower.
Yeah.
Like the Disney magic and
I'm a big fan of
big
Disney
fan
magic.
of Disney. And you want to get a set of the old movies that they have or something very expensive and
Yes. So a long time, well, not, I say a long time ago. At this point, it was maybe like 10 or so years ago. They released all of the old Disney cartoons, with other stuff as well, like certain Mickey Mouse Club episodes, Zorro episodes, like the old series.
the black and white ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like Davy Crockett, old Disney stuff.
Mm-hmm.
the main thing was the cartoons, and they released all of them, but they released them in limited amounts, and so these sets are now very expensive. So there's a bunch of them out there because they made a lot of cartoons. But if you wanted to say get Donald Duck, right? There are 4 sets of strictly Donald Duck cartoons. Each one is going to run you like $150 minimum. All right. So you're looking at $600 for just one character, right? And it's like you have another 4 that are just Mickey. You have 1 that's just Goofy. You have 2 for Pluto. I think there's another one that's just a mix of the different characters. It's way too expensive.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah.
Pluto and Goofy, they're both dogs, right? I heard that there's a problem there.
They are, yeah.
Goofy wears clothes.
Yeah. Goofy's an anthropomorphic dog, whereas Pluto is just a strictly dog.
And now Disney, I saw some funny thing. I told you about it. I think it was at The Simpsons where they were taking Goofy away to the pounds. No, I'm not a dog. But anyway, so Disney's pretty big right now. You're saying they own a lot of things. They own Star Wars, you said now?
Yep.
A lot of money in there.
Yeah. Yeah, so Disney owns, I mean, they're kind of their big things that they have owned recently are Star Wars and Marvel Comics.
Oh, they own Marvel too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And so, in addition to that, they own Pixar, so they have all the Toy Story and stuff like that. They own other kind of movie companies, like I think they own Touchstone, they own Miramax. But beyond that, they also own things like ABC, they own ESPN, they own the History Channel, I believe they own National Geographic as well. They're, I'm not sure if it's finalized or not, but they're in talks of buying Fox. So they weren't going to buy the news portion of it, but they were going to buy all of their television and movie stuff. So they would own the rights. If that went through, they would own the rights to like The Simpsons, Family Guy, the Aliens franchise, stuff like that.
That's a lot of money in there.
Yeah, and I think it's common to get the idea that Disney is somehow unique in this, and that they're just this massive corporation that there isn't other ones like it. But there's about 5 huge media corporations that own almost everything else. So Disney's, in my opinion, Disney's big rival is Warner Brothers. And so they tend to have an answer for everything. So Disney has Marvel. Warner Brothers owns DC Comics. You know, Disney has all of the, you know, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and all that. Warner Brothers has Looney Tunes, so they have Bugs and Daffy and Porky Pig and all that. They also throughout their
Tom and Jerry? Tom and Jerry?
Yeah, so they own Hanna-Barbera, which has Tom and Jerry, Flintstones, Jetsons, Scooby-Doo, the Smurfs, and then a bunch of like lesser known ones too, like Goober and the Ghost Chasers and like
Warner Brothers. But Warner Brothers is also, they make a lot of movies. I mean, isn't Warner Brothers like motion pictures? And
they make plenty of movies, and they make very like financially successful movies. So they made the Harry Potter movies. So that's made them a ton of money. They now own New Line Cinema, which they owned it after The Lord of the Rings came out, but they owned it during the Hobbit movies. So although not as good, they still made a lot of money.
what are the other 3? Do you know? Besides Warner Brothers and Disney?
So the Xfinity, the Comcast one.
Comcast?
That's one of the big ones because
Really?
they have like NBC and they have other stuff as well. I think they own Universal.
Is Virgin
well.
anywhere in there? Do they own it? It's just a small. That's
No,
like small potatoes?
Virgin's separate there. But yeah.
Well, the one of the things about Robert, one of the things, well, I'll talk to you actually, I'm talking to the audience, but when I uh, come into work, you're always looking something up new, some type of knowledge or something. So you have this desire to learn things, always new things. So you're always obviously you must be finding new things, always new things to learn. I'm assuming because I mean you haven't exhausted all the knowledge
Not yet.
that is out there. No, yeah, yeah, and you haven't gotten to the end of the internet yet. So,
No. No.
but what was what's like one thing recently that you found out? Oh, it's really pretty cool that
Um,
in your research there.
so I think going back to kind of the five media companies that kind of control everything, that won't control everything, but own the majority of what we see, that in other industries there's similar things. So I've been looking up stuff about tools, for example,
Okay.
and there's surprisingly few amount of tool companies out there. So you look at the biggest one is Stanley Black and Decker.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many tools out there that that brand is actually owned by Stanley Black and Decker. So Stanley Black and Decker produces tools under the Stanley and Black and Decker
Mm-hmm.
brands, but they also own Irwin tools. They also own Porter Cable. They own Bostitch. They own, I believe, it's Mac Tools. They own DeWalt, which is huge. And they've recently acquired Craftsman, and they've revitalized that, and they're producing that. So when you go to a store, like, say, Lowe's would be a great example of it, because they sell the Craftsman tools, the new ones now. When you go to Lowe's, you can be looking at it and you can be comparing these different tools, but you're not necessarily comparing, giving your money to a different company. You know, so if you're going to Lowe's, you're probably going to be looking at Cobalt, which is the house brand of Lowe's, Craftsman, because they're really pushing it now, and DeWalt, which is their biggest seller. Well, out of those three, two of those, the money's going to the same company. You know, and so if you look into it, there's plenty of stuff that's like that. So I think it's with one tool producer also produces vacuums, and they own, I think it's Dirt Devil, I think it's Dirt Devil, Hoover, and Oric are all
Oric.
owned by the same company. So you might think that you're kind of looking at different options, but you're really looking at stuff from the same house.
So you think a lot of the world is run that way right now? That there's just a few entities that we don't know that actually own a large group of most of the industries, whatever industry we may be talking about? It's not
I would say it's less than what we think.
less than what
There's less variety than what we think at the end. I mean, so taking the tool example, there is a big difference between a DeWalt tool and a Black & Decker tool. But they are owned by the same company. The money is still going to the same place.
yeah.
But in other industries, yeah, I think there is one higher entity that owns a bunch of the lower ones. So what you think is variety is not quite there. So my dad, for example, he works in he sells milled flour.
Flour, yeah.
You know, and so he's gone to these bakeries where they'll be just bringing out tons and tons of loaves of bread, and you'll see it, you know, go into the name brand bag, and then it also going into the generic, the knockoff brand bag too. It's out of the same facility.
Really?
Yeah,
We're being had.
a little bit. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's still bread, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't think about that. I go, hey, you know, we'll buy some flour. Whatever the last guy on TV told me is a good one, that's the one I'm gonna probably buy. Not even know it. So, well, It's kind of like if you think about you were telling me about Marvel and DC, and Marvel owns certain characters, certain heroes and villains and whatever, and DC does also own certain characters and villains. Do they ever cross pollinate? Does that ever happen between them? Or
It happens from time to time.
yeah.
Not frequently though. So whenever you get characters from one um, kind of universe, if you will, and go to another one, it's called a crossover. Um, so they have had crossovers in the past. The ones that I've seen actually weren't that good. But there are some exceptions. So I read a comic that was Punisher and the Batman, and so it was like that was DC and Marvel, and that was kind of cool.
Punishment's like a hero kind of guy, then, right? Is he from Marvel or
Yeah,
DC?
he's from Marvel. Yeah.
Huh. But some of these characters are kind of like sounds like they're not quite sinister, but there's a lot of anger in there.
Yeah, so someone like Punisher, he
Yeah.
would definitely fall into the category of like an anti-hero.
Anti-hero.
Yeah.
Define anti-hero for the audience. That way we can we're on the same page.
An anti.
I'd rather you do it than me because I'm probably gonna get it wrong. So.
I say an anti-hero would be somebody who fights against a worse evil than themselves. They're not a paragon of virtue. They're not particularly moral. But whoever it is they fight against is less moral than them. Is truly villainous. Whereas an anti-hero might kind of bend the rules or break them sparingly. Whoever they're fighting against is supposedly a lot worse.
It's a worse evil.
Yeah.
They're a lesser evil.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, all right. Let's talk a little bit about. We can still stay in the same kind of lane, but that I'm thinking about going back to maybe your younger years when you were younger. Some of this fascination probably started at a younger age, right? When you started liking the superheroes and whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that started, before comics and stuff, I would watch the cartoons. I watched the X-Men and Spider-Man cartoon shows, and then eventually I watched the Batman cartoon show.
The X-Man.
X-Men.
You never watch the Batman and Robin with the what's his name?
With Adam West?
Adam West?
I've seen a few episodes.
Is that supposed to be a joke or is that for real? It's hard to tell.
It is actually supposed to be a joke. They knew how
I didn't know
silly.
that when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, you were a kid. They knew how silly it was.
Destroying a bunch of kids' dreams right now.
Yeah. Those kids.
Kids
are
from the
all,
1960s.
Those kids are all middle aged by this point.
Yeah. Some of them
It's
might be
okay.
going like, "What?"
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you never.
Yeah.
You watched that. Those were fun.
Yeah,
But-
they were fun in a different way. So with that, it's kind of funny comparing the two. So with the Adam West Batman, you have it's just super campy, and they know it's kind of a joke, and it's geared towards children, and children were the ones who watched it. Whereas when you had the animated adventures of Batman and Robin, that was primarily geared towards children, but it was so well written and it was so well produced that they started noticing that it was getting a greater adult audience developing. Not as much as the children, but like a significant portion. And so they ended up kind of gearing the show to almost more suit the adults, not make the storyline super simple, but make it more appealing to the adults, and the children will kind of have to catch up
How did they find?
to
Did
watch
they
them.
find like a lot of adults talking about it and say, "Hey, there's a adult people."
Yeah, like Nielsen reports and stuff like that.
Oh, so they probably changed the hours too, maybe.
No, I think they kept it the same.
Some adults
It's
stayed
just-
home, didn't go to
They'd
work,
have
and just
to.
watching.
I guess they'd have to watch it on Saturday morning, like all the kids.
And another venue that they have for profit on these games they do a lot of video games with these things, right? A lot of
Yeah.
the shows, they have their own video games and so forth.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that you like to do.
Yeah, I'm
You
big.
still like it a lot, right? I mean,
I
yeah,
do.
because you tell me.
I don't play as much as I used to, but I still buy games and still play them frequently. Yeah.
And so when you've been playing since you were a kid, like the video games. Is that like
Yeah.
something?
Oh yeah. As a kid, my first video game system was the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I currently have a Super Nintendo, and it's the third one that I've had because I've sold my Super Nintendo and then rebought another one,
Mm-hmm.
and then been like, I don't really like this. I'll sell it,
Yeah.
and then rebuy it again. And so now I'm like, I've made this mistake enough times. Like, I'm not selling it because eventually I'm gonna want to play it again.
So it's kind of is it a nostalgic thing when you play it, or is it this is really a good game? This was well designed and so forth, and or
It depends on the game. Some of
Dep-
them, there's a solid, well-made game, and it doesn't matter if I played it as a kid or not.
Really?
Whereas other games, they're not that great, but I'll play it because, like, I used to play it as a kid, and be like, oh yeah, this is fun.
and you also play more complicated games because you told me about I mean, sometimes when you tell me about the video games that you played, the level of involvement seems pretty incredible to me. That, I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'd say one of my favorite games is this game called Mountain Blade Warband, and it takes place in this kind of medieval setting where all of the countries are fictional, but it's this medieval setting where there's like 6 nations that are kind of vying for power against each other, and they basically just throw your character into it, and like there's no real storyline. It's just like, okay, you're in the middle of the situation, like what are you gonna do? And so you can build up like a merchant base. Like you can trade goods, traveling from city to city, viewing the prices of things, and you can basically by your actions alter the economy of the entire land. You can raise mercenaries to join you. You can act as a bandit, preying on caravans. You can be hired by a lord of one of the nations. You can become kind of not knighted, but you can be given land so that you serve as a lord to one of the nations. You can start your own nation.
are there like other people also that are playing the game at the same time you're playing, or
So not in that mode. So if you're doing that, it's just you and you're playing against the game. You can play against other players in that game, but it's strictly just a battle. It's just people just fighting each
go
other.
in and
That's
beat
it.
people up?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things a long time ago I remember. I think they're probably still debating. They're talking about, and you tell me you were a kid when you were a kid and you were playing these games. There's always this argument of, oh, if you watch too many of these games, that could translate into real life, and you'll go out there and chop somebody off with an axe. How much validity do you feel is in that, from your perspective? How many
So-
people have you killed? Basically, is what I'm trying to ask you.
None so far. I mean, but I'm still playing games, so I don't know.
All right.
I would say that it can't just outright be dismissed. Like some people will say, like, like, what is Mario gonna do? He runs and he jumps on like mushroom guys. It's like that's not gonna cause anybody to be violent. And it's like, yeah, that's probably true. There are games though that are incredibly violent where you're shooting people, and sometimes you're shooting people that are not combatants at all. They're not posing any risk to you, you know. And that's
You or you?
to the character
say
you're
you mean-
playing. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, but I wouldn't just say like, well, it's the game's fault if something goes wrong. I think violent games can nurture something that's already in somebody in a very negative way.
So you just get the wrong person, and the
Yeah.
same game that didn't do anything to you could just turn that person into the wrong way.
Absolutely.
Like most things, I guess. Then.
Yeah, I would say it's really just another it's just another medium. You know.
But when you play some of these games, you you feel some remorse when you get to the point. Oh, I gotta off this guy over here before I get to the Temple of Doom over there.
You know, sometimes yeah. Yeah, and it's so some games will actually, you know, will penalize you for doing stuff like that, which is for unnecessarily killing people, which is good because it'd be really bad if they encouraged that. But yeah, sometimes
Some encourage it though, don't they?
I think some of them do, which
Yeah.
is really bad. But yeah, so my instance of the most regret I've felt over
Oh, you're gonna bring that up?
killing,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I feel like that's what you're.
It
leading
wasn't me.
towards.
No, I didn't.
I played a game called Arcanum. The full title is Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura. That's the full title of it. It was a really great game. I think I've beaten it like 7 times. It's very unique, the world that it takes place in. Has all these like fantasy races like elves and dwarves and gnomes, and they live alongside human beings. But instead of it being your typical fantasy in a medieval setting, it's in the 1800s. So there are trains. There's a
Pretty elaborate.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's incredibly deep. It has a kind of mystery story that takes all these twists and turns, and there's this whole world that you can go exploring in. And so the part in the game where I was at was there was this book about dark elves that I had to track down. And so I went to the biggest city in that world, and I went to a librarian. And because I was like, if anybody's going to know where a book is, it's going to be the librarian. So this little gnome woman, librarian, I asked her, like, oh, do you have this book? And she's like, well, I can't really check unless you're a member of the library, which I think is outrageous to begin with. But
You should go to any town you
Whatever.
want to and just take a book out, right?
right? I mean, you can't look. You have to be a member. So they're like, all right, well, how much does it cost to be a member? And they're like, it's like 2,000 gold coins. And I was like, that's insane amount of money.
You need that money.
And so you're on an adventure. You need and you got people following you that you gotta buy armor and swords and stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So basically, what ended up happening was I paid for the membership, asked where the book was again. She looked, said she didn't have it, but had a book that was about the book I was looking for. And then so I killed the librarian.
She didn't get you the book?
She didn't actually get the book. She just got a book that was about the book. So I had to go like basically the other half of the world. And so as a result, yeah, I killed the gnome librarian and
gnome.
took my money back.
It's a gnome.
But
a big
I
deal.
will say what is good about that game is that if anybody had seen me do that in the game, right, they would have run and told the guards, and then at that point, everybody in the city would know this guy's a murderer. Like, attack him on sight.
Nobody saw you though.
Nobody saw me.
Did you like look around?
Nobody
before
was
you...
in the library at the time, so.
That's a long way from like Frogger and stuff like that. Isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, the stories have gotten quite complex beyond just
You played
cross
Frogger.
the road.
You played Frogger, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
Of course
Actually,
you did.
just in February, I got to play Frogger on an old stand-up arcade.
Wow.
So it was like an authentic stand-up arcade.
What was that? That wasn't when you went away. To
Yeah, it was in California. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you are, that just reminds me of that. You're in the process, oh, well, we don't have to talk about that, but you're in the process of moving, right, to a new place.
Yeah.
It's cool. You live in Milford. Right
Milford, yeah.
now. You're moving to
Woonsocket, Rhode Island.
Woonsocket.
It's not that far. It's like 2 towns away, but
That's pretty
it's in
exciting,
a
no?
different state and all that.
So you have to change your
know.
taxes and whatever and all that.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a little more space, and I know that you told me that the place that you currently live in is it's kind of small.
Yes.
So it's I guess it's on the top of a structure also. It's on the top floor. Of a
Yeah, it's above a garage,
structure. Okay.
which is not the glamorous life that Fonzie makes it out to be.
Fonzie?
Yeah.
Is that where he lives?
On Happy Days, Fonzie lived above a
all
garage.
all these details. I mean, I watch Happy Days. I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
But it gets pretty hot there in the summer.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could share with the audience the idea that you were developing for that to combat that heat that's still maybe in the back of your head, but someday maybe you'll pick it up again.
So, the idea was the cool suit,
The cool
which we eventually discovered is pretty much in existence. I thought it was a completely unique idea. But no, it does exist.
They already have it. The U.S. Army or something has it or something.
I think they have
Pentagon?
they have some level of it. So they've developed something like that for NASCAR as well. So they just aren't affected by the heat while they're driving because they're not. I guess it's lighter than having an air conditioning unit.
It's
in the
within your
actual
suit
car.
or something. Is it?
So there's like a separate unit that pumps cold water through hoses
Yeah.
that get to basically like heat sinks that'll go onto you and that'll basically dissipate the heat from you.
That's somewhat of like what the idea that you had. It was similar to that, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
some
I mean
pipes?
mine was gonna be like completely like self-contained and whatever, but it had some issues due to budgetary constraints.
Budgetary.
Put it that way. And
Well, it's a good idea.
in retrospect, I'm kind of glad that it didn't get
Well,
finalized. But I developed some stuff. I mean, I developed the heat sink that would go on me. You know, it was like fiberglass and
Oh, yeah,
aluminum,
okay.
and I had the fittings on it that you could pump water through it.
You went that far, but you didn't.
It just made just one heat sink. It would
Wow.
require multiple ones.
Now you made the heat sink before you knew what NASCAR had. That you came up with
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and that's what they have in NASCAR.
That's what they have. Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
they do it. I think their heat sinks are different than mine. Theirs would probably be less efficient materials wise, but probably infinitely more comfortable. So
Huh.
yeah.
Well, you got some ideas, and I know you made that football game for the kids at your church.
Yes.
That was very impressive.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's right now it's in storage
Mm-hmm.
because we're very close to getting a building for the church. But once we do, we'll set up that foosball table where it's the table itself is all of the players are all minions.
Yep.
And because because it's going in my church, the teams are separated into on the back of the jersey. They all have names, and one team it's all names from the Old Testament, and the other one it's
Oh, is that
all
right?
names from the New Testament. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Well, you like building stuff then. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
now, one thing about I noticed the stuff when you build this stuff was is well built, but you have you pay attention to detail, and I wonder when I see that I wonder I just I don't I couldn't build something like that. I don't have the patience to do something like that. But that seems to be like something that you like to do, and when you set out to do something, you do it, and you you bring it to its completion, and it's well built. I mean, it's what you intended to build, basically. I mean, because you could build something that you intend to build, but in terms of function, won't necessarily serve the function, but it was well built, like that torture thing that you made with the nails. That
You can't just
you don't have
say
to
I
feel
made a
bad.
torture thing
It
with
looks like a
nails, like
torture thing.
without
What
explaining
was
what
that?
it
Why don't you explain?
is. So in in my work, we have excess amounts of a polyester batting, and so it would be great if we could turn that polyester batting into a loose fill that we can just fill cushions with. So in order to shred that stuff apart, I developed two blocks that have nails sticking out of them on each side, and it would hit the batting and then move apart to rip them all apart at once. So it did look kind of like it essentially
Like
was a bed of nails.
Dracula's coffin or something.
Yeah, like an Iron Maiden, basically. Yeah.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, an Iron Maiden is the kind of this kind of stand up sarcophagus thing that has like a lid that has all the spikes in it.
That's
And
what they call that.
Yeah, you'd go inside and they'd shut it and it would poke you. Although
Poke you.
I've found out that it likely was never actually used.
So I use it once. You don't use it more than once.
Well, no, it's more of an idea. Like it's that it wasn't used in torturing people or whatever.
Somebody thought about getting it to separate like Dacron and stuff, and it just didn't work
No,
out.
it wasn't developed for. It wasn't essentially developed for any purpose.
Just for
There was
looks?
no historical record of it actually being used. It's just, I guess, some person was just drawing down like an old torture scene and was like, "Oh yeah, have this thing here. This would be a unique thing," and it's like, it wasn't actually used.
That's where the group stole the name from, the Iron Maiden.
I don't think they stole the
I mean,
name, but yeah,
took it from
that's what they're named after.
precisely.
Yeah.
Ah, huh. Well, that's another thing you also like to delve into is music.
Yeah, I would say very specific tastes in music.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Like I know one of them is theocracy. Is that?
Yeah.
That's how specific is that?
So, oh man, Theocracy would be a Christian progressive metal band, which I mean, when you tack on when it's a Christian metal band, there aren't a ton of them out there, and and so to say it's a progressive metal band as well, that's like even smaller amount. I think there's like
What do they mean by progressive when they use that in there?
so that means that they do more like experimental type sounds. It's kind of
Okay.
like progressive rock.
Okay.
There are examples of progressive rock or something like Pink Floyd and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So to have it be Christian progressive metal, there's not many like them, and what is out there is generally not that good. But Theocracy itself, I think, is I would easily say it's the best Christian progressive metal band. I would personally say it's the best Christian metal band, and I think they're good enough to be considered one of the best metal bands as well.
Wow. So I never heard of it until you showed me the group. But that's pretty amazing. Do they delve into also a little bit of history in their songs in some places, historical events?
Only, I would say only from a Christian perspective. So there's one song that they have, I believe it's called "Nailed," which is which is about Martin Luther and basically his ideas that lead to the 95 Theses of just being like, I'm trying to achieve.
95 Theses of Luther. You're going to explain that a little bit to the people that are listening.
So
Martin Luther.
The 95 Theses of Martin Luther were 95 kind of separate points that Luther made that he had issue with the Catholic Church. They're basically the grounds that he had for essentially leaving the church and starting the Reformation. You could actually, I would say, you probably would point to that moment as the start of the Reformation.
Protestants, kind of a wing out of that.
Yeah, the Protestants, they're that's how they come about is from that. Which is not a common thing to base a metal song on, but
I guess not,
it turned out pretty good. So
theocracy. Well, we're talking about then there's something that's important in your life. Then we're talking about your Christian faith right now. I mean, that's what seems to have led to that, which is an interesting subject also. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about that? That's something that's a big part of your life.
yeah, it's I could.
It's a great segue from the part where you told me that in the video you had to kill that.
Yeah, or that one of my favorite characters is a devil
Hellboy.
baby that came from hell. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say it's by far the most important part of my life, as it affects every other aspect of my life.
Yeah.
And it's not something that that I've always had. I grew up going to church, but I didn't really believe any of the stuff in the church. Well, to be fair, I didn't know most of the stuff of Christianity. I knew a few stories here and there. Jesus was the Son of God. The basics of him, like that he died and he rose from the dead. But my perception of God was really like only seeing like one side of the coin, whereas like I was fully convinced that he was against evil and sin, and he had this wrathful side to him, and like that was kind of all I knew. And I can't really look back and point to anything in particular that made me kind of start believing that way. A lot of people will say like they grew up in a Catholic church and that's what was preached to them or whatever. So
Right.
I grew up going to a United Church of Christ, and that they were very far from hellfire brimstone type preaching. But
Yeah.
growing up, that's what I believed, was just that God was angry with me and I was never good enough for him, and yeah, and it was not particularly good.
Not very comforting.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
To just be aware like that God's angry with you. Yeah.
But then you moved on from there to a different perception of God then.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I got better. So it's from I basically reached a point. I was about 19 where I was like, okay, like this is a bad situation. I got to do something to fix this. All right. So I just felt drawn to the Bible and I started reading it, and I wouldn't recommend this part. I started with Revelation and then looped back to the Old Testament, which is just reading Revelation got me super confused, and then went back and started reading the Old Testament. And the way my mind is geared was, I was like, if only there was like a set of rules that I could follow, then if I follow those, God will be like kind of on my side. I'll get on his good side and everything will be fine. And then I start reading like the Mosaic law in it, just the like the 10 commandments and the Levitical laws and stuff like that. And I was like, this is it. Like, that was just, I just got to follow these, these rules. Mostly the ones that were convenient. I didn't, have any sheep sacrificed or anything like that, The ones that were too, difficult and convoluted for me, I didn't do. But there were other ones that I stuck with. And I was like, yeah, I'll follow these. And for about 3 years, I thought that that's what being a Christian was. Just follow these rules, and that's that. And then in the summer between my junior and senior year, I came upon a guy preaching on a Christian channel. And I just felt like, hey, I'm a Christian, I should watch this. And he was talking about Jesus, and he was saying stuff that I had never heard before. And the show ended, and then the next one started, and I watched that, and he was talking about Jesus. And I was like, that's weird. It's like the guy before was talking about Jesus. Why would, all right, whatever. So I watched that, that ended, the next guy started up, and he was talking about Jesus. And then I was like, okay, they probably like arranged their programming like by subject on the day. So like this is probably like Jesus Day. And then like tomorrow will be like a different subject or whatever. That's fine. And so I just, as the days went on, I kept watching it. And I was like, no, Jesus is like a way bigger deal to Christianity than I was under the impression of. I didn't
It's Jesus Day.
know anything about it. Yeah. It turns out every day is Jesus Day to Christians. So I heard the gospel presented in one of them, and it was just like, these rules that you're trying to follow, you can't. Like, you can't do it. Jesus took your place. And like, I was like, yeah, I need that. That was it.
That's a great story. Jesus Day. I like that. Well, that's a wonderful story. So the point being, just to reiterate, is that there was all these rules, and we think that following Jesus is just the same as following rules, and thinking that by following those rules we can live up to what he wants us to be. But he already basically did all that for us. And not that we should just break all the rules now that he loves us, but because he loves us, it would be natural for us to want to please him and to do the right thing. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of contrasting obeying in order to be accepted as opposed to being accepted and then obeying as a response to that.
Okay. Well, it looks to me like we're about to wrap it up, I think. I really appreciate, that really went by kind of fast for me. I don't know about you, but I really appreciated Robert coming over, joining me, and thank you to all of you, and we'll hope to see you next week with someone else who will share their story.